cause and effect. If I landed a jump slightly off center, I could feel extra stress in my ankle. If I ignored a slight ache in my knee, it would be twice as bad the next day. If I took time to stretch and recover, my body felt lighter and more capable the following day. I started to wonder why. Why did some movements feel effortless, while others felt forced? Why did recovery sometimes feel like an afterthought, even though it was just as essential as training? Why did some people seem to stay injury-free, while just as strong and just as disciplined people constantly dealt with pain? At first, these questions were about me, my experience. As many of you know, I was in and out of a walking boot last year. And even though I've spent years researching injury prevention, everything shifted when I found myself researching it while injured. Suddenly, it wasn't just something I had to read about, it was something I had to live. I was applying techniques in real time and testing what worked and what didn't work on my own body. That experience is what truly led me to my senior project research. And the deeper I went in, the more I realized that this wasn't just about dance, and this wasn't just about me. Movement is a constant in everyone's lives. Whether you're someone who plays sports or spends hours at a desk, the way you move or don't move has a lasting impact on your body. I wanted to understand the bigger picture, not just how to treat athletes' injuries, but how to prevent them in the first place. I wanted to understand what separates the people who thrive in their movements from those who struggle with injury, because those differences aren't random. They are the results of habits, choices, and knowledge, or sometimes lack of it. Originally, my research wasn't centered on all athletes. It was focused on performing artists. For the first few months, everything I studied revolved around how injury prevention, recovery, and movement habits impacted dancers. It wasn't until I spoke with my first live source, Alan Kroll, an athletic trainer in New York specializing in performing arts, that my perspective shifted. During our conversation, he made a statement that completely changed the way I approached my research. There's no difference between an athlete and a performing artist. To illustrate this, he drew a comparison that stuck with me. He said, take a hockey player. They're on the ice for a few minutes, giving it their all, then they rotate off to rest before their next shift. That's the same exact structure as a ballet dancer who performs on stage before stepping into the wings to recover. While the techniques may differ, the recovery process is fundamentally the same. This realization was a turning point for me, but also made me reflect on how my initial mindset had been limiting my research for a while. I was so focused on the distinctions between athletes and performing artists that I failed to see their similarities. I kept treating them as separate, when in reality they face the same physical demands and require the same recovery strategies to sustain their performance. Let's start with a simple question. What is physical therapy? The term we hear all the time, but what does it truly mean? Most people immediately think of rehab, recovering from surgery, doing exercises with resistant bands, or relearning how to walk after an injury. Well, that is part of it. Physical therapy is so much more than just recovery. At its core, physical therapy is the science of human movement. It is about understanding how the body functions, how it adapts to physical stress, and how to optimize its potential. It's not just about fixing problems, it's about preventing them and improving performance. Whether you are recovering from an injury or striving to reach the next level in your sport. As an athlete, your body is your most valuable tool. Every muscle, joint, tendon, and ligament affect how you move. Even minor imbalances can throw everything off. Maybe after a long training session, one side of your body feels tighter than the other, or a small ache seems to appear out of nowhere. Physical therapists are like movement detectives. They analyze how an athlete moves, identifies weaknesses or imbalances, and finds the root cause of pain. A runner with knee pain might have weak hips. A baseball player with shoulder problems might have poor core stability. Instead of just treating pain. Physical therapy addresses the underlying issue, helping athletes recover faster and move better in the long run. Let's take a quick moment to do a test. Everyone stand up if you're able. Now pick up one foot off the ground and balance on the other leg. Hold it there for about 10 seconds, then switch to the other leg. Notice what happens. Do you feel stable? Are you wobbling? Is one side easier than the other? If you're struggling to stay balanced, it could mean weakness in your ankle, hip, or core. These imbalances might not seem like a big deal right now, but over time they can lead to inefficient movement. Now, let's try something else. Stand with your feet shoulder width apart and do a slow squat as if you're sitting in a chair. Pay attention to your knees. Did they cave inward? Do your heels lift off the ground? Do you feel tightness in your hips? These are all signs that certain muscles might be underactive or overcompensating, which can impact movement and increase injury risk. Thank you for participating. You may sit down. Physical therapists use these observations to identify potential weaknesses before they turn into problems. The good news is that once you know what to look for, you can start improving it with strength and mobility work. That is why physical therapy is essential. It's not just reactive, it's proactive. Athletes push their bodies harder than the average person, which means they also need to take better care of them. Think about an athlete who moves effortlessly, making everything look easy. That's not just talent, it is biomechanics working in their favor. Poor movement mechanics can turn small problems into major injuries. And without recovery, the body breaks down over time. Physical therapy keeps athletes ahead of injuries rather than just dealing with them after they happen. So why does this matter? Because for an athlete, movement is not just something you do. It's everything. The way you train, recover, and care for your bodies determines how long you stay in the game. Physical therapy is not just for when something goes wrong. It is for making sure things go right. In a world where athletes constantly push their limits, that kind of care is not just helpful, it is essential. No athlete wants to be sidelined. Watching from the bench or missing weeks of training is frustrating. While some injuries are unavoidable, many do not have to happen. One of the biggest reasons injuries occur is not because of a single bad movement. It is usually the result of repetitive stress over time. It might start with a tight muscle or a slightly off movement pattern. At first, it's not a big deal, but over time, those imbalances add up. One wrong step, one awkward landing, or one overworked muscle leads to an injury that could have been prevented. Injury prevention is not just about stretching or warming up, it is about training smarter. That means strengthening muscles that support key movements, maintaining flexibility where it matters, and knowing when your body needs rest. It is also about understanding how the body works as a system. A weak core can lead to lower back pain. Poor ankle mobility can put extra stress on the knees. Tight hips can throw off running form, leading to shin splints or foot pain. Everything is connected. So preventing injuries is not just about fixing one area, it is about making sure that the whole system is functioning properly. Take overuse injuries, for example. Stress fractures, tendinitis, and muscle strains are some of the most common injuries athletes face. They happen because the body is not recovering enough in between high-intensity efforts. Another key part of injury prevention is recognizing the difference between discomfort and actual pain. Athletes are often taught to push through, but ignoring early warning signs is how minor issues turn into major injuries. Learning when to push and when to step back is an extremely valuable skill an athlete can develop. Physical therapy helps athletes balance intensity with recovery and build strength in ways that support long-term performance. For so long, the conversation around athletes has been about physical strength, endurance, and resilience. We celebrate the ones who push through. who never show weakness, and who come back from injuries faster than expected. But we don't nearly talk enough about the mental and emotional toll that takes. Being an athlete, whether at a professional level or in high school, comes with an incredible amount of stress. Athletes are conditioned to push through, to improve, to prove themselves. This mindset, while it can drive achievement, is also incredibly harmful when it comes to the recovery process. How often do we hear stories of players in pain, skipping recovery, just pushing their limits, all because they don't want to be seen as weak? The more this mindset is reinforced, the more dangerous it becomes. When toughness is focused on over health, athletes stop listening to their body, putting themselves at even greater risk. Let's say an athlete gets injured. Maybe it's a torn ligament or a stress fracture from overtraining. The physical side of recovery is straightforward. Rest, rehabilitation, strengthening exercises, and a gradual return to activity. But suddenly, the thing that was a part of their identity is taken away, and that can be just as painful as the injury itself. If an athlete believes that their progress is being erased, they're going to struggle not just physically, but mentally. Physical therapists don't just help with the physical side of healing, they help athletes shift their perspective. Instead of seeing recovery as lost time, they help athletes see it as an opportunity to rebuild smarter, to come back stronger, and to correct imbalances that might have led to the injury in the first place. That shift in mindset takes work. It takes patience, and it takes recognizing that healing is just as much a mental process as it is a physical one. One of the biggest challenges athletes face when it comes to mental health is the way society views them. We glorify athletes who push through pain, who play through injuries, who never back down. We admire their toughness. What we don't talk about is what that costs them. The long-term injuries, the chronic pain, the mental exhaustion, and the pressure to be unstoppable even when their bodies are telling them to stop. The most successful athletes aren't just physically strong, they're mentally strong. They understand that recovery is a part of the process. Setbacks happen, but they don't define them. Taking a break doesn't mean they're losing progress. They are protecting their future. Mindset is important in every aspect of an athlete's career. It affects how they handle injuries, how they approach training, how they deal with pressure, and ultimately how long they stay in the game. Athletes with a growth mindset who see setbacks as opportunity tend to recover faster, adapt better, and come back stronger. Those who see injuries as failure, as something that takes away from their identity, struggle. Physical therapy is education. It is about teaching athletes how to listen to their bodies, how to manage the mental side of training, and how to build a mindset that supports health. We should not define an athlete's career by how much pain they can tolerate. We should define them by how well they take care of themselves. If there's one thing every athlete knows, it's that their body is their engine, and what you put into it determines how well it runs. Yet nutrition is often treated as an afterthought. Think about it. Every sprint, jump, lift, and movement requires energy. That energy comes from food, not just calories, but the right balance of macronutrients, micronutrients, and hydration. Nutrition is the foundation of performance, yet many athletes neglect it or don't fully understand its role. Training isn't just about the work being put in. Your body is also working after, repairing muscle, replenishing energy stores, and adapting to stress. Without the proper nutrients, that process slows down. Recovery takes longer, performance suffers, and over time, small deficiencies can lead to bigger problems, like fatigue, injury, and sometimes even chronic illnesses. Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats all serve a purpose. Carbs provide quick energy for high-intensity efforts. Protein repairs and rebuilds muscle. Fat supports long-term energy and essential bodily functions. Then there's hydration. Even slight dehydration can impact endurance, focus, and reaction time. When the body doesn't get the right nutrients it needs, it becomes more vulnerable to stress and strain. Weak bones, tight muscles, and slow healing can all be linked to poor nutrition. Calcium and vitamin D strengthen bones. Omega-3s reduce inflammation. Iron carries oxygen to the muscles, preventing fatigue. Every body system relies on proper nutrition to function at its best. Yet, many athletes don't recognize when their nutrition is off. Maybe they aren't eating enough, thinking less food means better performance. Maybe they're eating too much of the wrong things, filling up on processed foods instead of nutrient-dense options. Or maybe they're mistiming their meals, missing the critical post-workout window when the body is primed to recover. Small mistakes like these, repeated over time, can make a huge difference in the athlete's ability to stay healthy and perform at their best. One of the biggest mindset shifts an athlete needs to make is seeing food as more than just something to eat. It is a tool for energy, recovery, and longevity. Just like physical therapy improves movement, nutrition sustains it. You can train as hard as you want, but if you're not fueling properly, you're limiting yourself. It's about making sure that everything you put into your body moves you closer to your goals, not further away. The reality is, no matter how hard you train or how well you eat, if you're not getting enough rest and sleep, your body is truly never recovering. Without recovery, there is no progress. It's just a cycle of breaking down without rebuilding. Yet, in a culture of sports and performance, rest is often seen as optional. We glorify the no day off mentality, the idea that pushing harder, training longer, and doing more will always lead to better results. But science tells a different story. The truth is, the best athletes focus on sleep and recovery just as much as they focus on training. When you sleep, your body is rebuilding. Every movement you make during the day, every weight lifted, every mile ran, every jump landed creates small amounts of stress and damage in your muscles and tissue. Sleep is when that damage gets repaired. When muscle fibers rebuild and energy stores replenish. That is also when the brain processes motor skills and coordination. Sleep is the time when your body turns training into results. During deep sleep, the body releases human growth hormone, or HGH, which is essential for muscle repair, bone growth, and overall recovery. Without enough deep sleep, your body doesn't produce enough HGH, and your ability to recover slows down. That means longer healing times and a higher risk of injury. Studies have shown that even one night of poor sleep can reduce reaction time, coordination, and cognitive function. For an athlete, that can mean missing a critical shot, reacting too slowly to an opponent, or making a split-second mistake that leads to an injury. Over time, lack of sleep increases cortisol, the stress hormone that breaks down muscle tissue and raises inflammation. This makes it harder for the body to bounce back after training. It's not just about the body, it's about the mind too. Lack of sleep affects focus, decision-making, and emotional control. Athletes who don't get enough rest are more likely to feel mentally drained, less motivated, and experience higher levels of anxiety and depression. Beyond sleep, rest in general is something that athletes often struggle with. Taking a rest day can feel like falling behind or missing an opportunity to get stronger. But rest days are just as important as training days. They give the body time to repair itself, prevent overuse injuries, and help avoid burnout. Think of it like this. If you keep bending a paperclip back and forth over and over again without stopping, eventually it's going to snap. Your muscles, tendons, and joints work in the same way. Without enough recovery, the wear and tear builds up until something gives. Rest is not a weakness. Athletes who learn how to use it properly are the ones who have the longest, healthiest careers. Research shows that the average person needs around 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Athletes often need closer to 9 to 10 to fully recover from the physical and mental demands of training. It's not just about how long you sleep, but the quality of that sleep. A consistent sleep schedule, less screen time before bed, and a good sleep environment all make sure your body gets the deep, restorative rest it needs. Training is about balance. Pushing your limits is important, but knowing when to rest is just as critical. Sleep and recovery aren't just something that happens when your body gets tired. They are an active part of the recovery process. And athletes who take them seriously are the ones who stay healthier longer. We're taught from a young age to listen to our coaches, trainers, and trust the process. But what happens when something feels off? When an ache turns into a pain that won't go away? When something just doesn't feel right? This is where self-advocacy becomes one of the most important skills an athlete can develop. Self-advocacy isn't just about speaking up when you're injured. It's about knowing your body, understanding its limits, and making informed decisions about your health. It's about recognizing when to push forward and when to step back. Most importantly, it's about having the confidence to ask for what you need, even when the culture around you tells you to stay silent. Ideally, every coach, trainer, and medical professional would have an athlete's best interest in heart. Most of the time, they do. But even the best coaches don't know exactly what you're feeling. They don't know how your body responds to different training loads, how your energy levels change, or whether that minor pain is something more serious. That's why athletes need to take an active role in their own health. Too often, injuries that could have been prevented become more serious because athletes ignore the warning signs. Of course, advocating for yourself isn't always easy. Many athletes feel the pressure to keep going no matter what. A culture of toughness in sports makes it feel like weakness and injury are failures. But real strength comes from understanding your limits and doing what is necessary to protect your health. Athletes need to develop body awareness. That means paying attention to patterns, how their body feels after different types of training, how long it takes to recover, and what pain feels normal versus what pain feels concerning. The better an athlete knows their body, the easier it is to recognize when something isn't right. Athletes also need to communicate. This means not only speaking up when something feels wrong, but also asking questions. Why am I feeling this pain? What recovery strategies should I be using? How can I adjust my training to prevent this from happening again? Athletes should feel empowered to work with their coaches, trainers, and medical professionals as partners, not just people who give orders. No matter how talented you are or how much potential you have, none of that matters if you're not healthy enough to play. Now, if you're not an athlete, you might be thinking, well, this doesn't really apply to me. Here's the thing, movement affects everyone. Maybe you're not training for a game, but do you want to wake up every morning feeling exhausted? Do you want to reach a point where simple activities like going up the stairs, playing with your kids, or carrying groceries becomes difficult? This isn't just about sports, it's about life. The way you take care of your body determines how it functions years down the line. That's why everything I've talked about, physical therapy, injury prevention, mental health, nutrition, rest, self-advocacy, it matters to all of us. Physical therapy is not just for athletes, it's for anyone who wants to live without pain, move freely, and stay active as they get older. We all have a body, we all have to take care of it. Ignoring that reality doesn't mean the consequences won't catch up with you. So the real question is, are you willing to invest in your body now? Are you gonna wait till your body forces you to stop? So here's my challenge to you. Start paying attention. Start treating your body like something worth taking care of, not just something you can push until it breaks. No one else is living in your body. No one else knows what you feel, what hurts, what's working and what isn't. Whether you're on a team or in a workplace, training for a championship, or just trying to feel better day to day, your health is in your hands. If something feels off, say something. If you need rest, take it. If you're not getting the answers you need, keep pushing until you do. Because at the end of the day, no one else can do that for you. For this project, I used Microsoft OneNote, building off my experience from my junior year and advice from past seniors. I've always been very organized regarding my research phase, and OneNote made it easy to keep everything in order. This was especially important since I used a wide variety of sources to get a well-rounded perspective. One of the main goals of this project was to educate people on a topic that seems straightforward, but is much more complex than many realize. From the very beginning, I wanted to do more than just share the information. I wanted to create an engaging way for people to truly understand these concepts. To bring this to life, I led 4 hands-on workshops covering the key aspects of athletic health, injury and pain management, mental health, recovery and sleep, and then sports nutrition basics. Basically everything that I covered today, but in a more interactive way. These workshops allowed participants to not only learn, but also reflect on their own habits, ask questions, and then see how small changes could improve their health. And then as my project progressed, I realized to truly understand the habits of athletes, I needed to observe them in real time. So I conducted a study where I tracked factors like activity levels, sleep, nutrition, and hydration over the course of 3 weeks. My goal wasn't just to see the individual patterns, but to understand how these elements interacted and influenced overall performance. To make this as clear as possible, I put together a Google Sheet to track everything that I felt necessary based off my research. I included guidelines and a reference for what the rating levels should look like to keep things consistent. Originally, I had planned to create a data chart that would easily show the differences over time, but with fewer participants than I had hoped for and some inconsistencies in the data, putting together accurate charts wasn't realistic. So instead, I spent the day analyzing the information that I did have, writing down trends, and putting together a thoughtful reflection. What I found interesting was there was so much variation in habit from day to day, and those fluctuations had a noticeable impact on the body. Some stuck to a consistent schedule, while others saw shifts in energy, recovery, and even mood depending on their daily choices. What stood out was how everything worked together. It wasn't just about getting enough sleep or eating well, it was about how all these factors connected. More importantly, the study sparked conversations about what changes these athletes could be making to their training, and that's exactly what I hoped for. While this project stands as the most in-depth and successful project I've ever done here, I feel like it's just the beginning. Next year, I will attend the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I plan to pursue my Bachelor of Science in Dance and Kinesiology on the physical therapy track. I'm excited to be a part of a community where I can explore further. Thank you to my live sources for your insight and time. Thank you to my friends and family for your support and encouragement. And thank you to all the advisors who have helped brainstorm, organize, and refine this project and so many others. Your guidance means the world. I'd be happy to take questions. Veronica.
What role does chiropractic play in physical therapy, and what's your view on it?
So Veronica asked, what role does chiropractic impact physical therapy, and what's my view on it? I've not done much research on that myself. Most physical therapists are trained in the basics of chiropractic work. But I do not have an opinion on that right now. Ms. Fornes.
You had a lot of knowledge about physical therapy going into this. What was your biggest like aha moment from all your research, or your biggest takeaway?
Ms. Fornes asked what was my biggest takeaway from my research, being that I've already researched this a lot. I think this year I truly discovered how much everything is connected. Last year, a lot of my projects had to do with like the individual things that bring physical therapy together. But this year I got to see how everything connected. It was really interesting. Corbin?
Is there a meal you recommend to help with like any sort of physical activity you do?
So Corbin asks, is there a meal you would recommend for any type of physical activity? And it really depends on what you're doing. I would say the biggest thing is making sure you're getting protein before you do that physical activity, and then replenishing afterwards. But like what the meal is gonna look different based on everyone.
I know for example, we talk about how ballet's very like shorter, right? Like a couple of minutes, you're
Mhm.
on the stage. What would the difference be between ballet or something super long like basketball, where you're on the court for like 90, 80 minutes? Like what would be the difference between those two? I guess like short versus long, like physical work.
Cameron asked, what's the difference between the long and short physical work? I'm not sure. I think it would be pretty similar, because they're still getting a recovery period. They're not just running around forever, but I'm not sure. Hazel?
Could you explain more about your mindset going through the boot time in dance? Like how did that affect you?
Hazel asked how my injury last year affected my mindset. I don't know if it really changed my mindset going into it, but I think it just laid out a more clear picture of, okay, I actually know these things work now. I don't think there was much of a mindset shift. Isaac?
Is there, like, I guess injury-wise, is there a difference between like cold sports and like warm sports? Sports that you do in warm weather versus in cold weather?
Isaac asked if there was a difference between warm sports and cold sports. I don't have an answer to that. None of my research brought up a difference in temperature. I feel like there would have to be, though. I'm not sure. Aaliyah?
At the beginning of your presentation, you talked about how dance is a really big part of you. Can you give like an example of a time where you really learned the value from specifically your time dancing?
Elaborate more.
Like a time that's really going to stick with you, like or maybe a memory
That relates to this project?
or just your dancing. Like with ballet or whatever it is.
I'm confused on what you're asking.
Okay. Like a time, like a show in specifics, or a time where you were dancing with all of your friends there, that's really gonna stick with you forever, like a core memory that. will
So not
stick-
relating to the project?
No.
Okay. Malia asked me if I had any dance moments that stuck out to me. There's a lot. I'll say one I'll never forget is our director. We had a series of solos, and our director kept changing mine, and it was significantly changed about 30 minutes before the show. And Meredith, being Meredith, memorized it in like 2 seconds, and she was in the wings marking it as I danced on stage. Miss Lukey.
Have you crossed any anecdotes of an athlete who had retired or moved on in their lives and had really either taken care of their health and like were able to sustain their health or athleticism for a long time, and then maybe or one that person that really like felt like they deteriorated because of their athletics, for example?
One that I wrote about this in my essay, but it was Derrick Rose. He's an NBA player. He went from being MVP and sustained a bunch of knee injuries, a few ankle injuries. He was just constantly getting injured every time he tried to come back. And he speaks very openly now about the mental pressures that he was facing to come back as soon as possible. But he was never really truly able to get back to his best form because he kept doing that. Adrian? Adrian asked, what would I change about this project? I would start the study earlier and find a more consistent group of people to fill it out so I could get more realistic data. So just planning ahead with products. Yeah. Isaac?
Advice for future seniors.
Isaac asked advice for future seniors. I'm gonna say the cliche, take it one step at a time, but then also, this is a reflection of who you are and what you've learned here, so make it meaningful. Veronica.
If any, what are the differences between treating a physical therapy patient who is like young versus older?
Veronica asked the difference between treating a patient who's younger and older. And it's really gonna depend on each person. Yeah, it's gonna change with every person that you meet. Recovery is not a linear thing. Ms. K?
You mentioned briefly that mistimed meals can
Mhm.
really impact performance and or recovery. I wondered if you could share a little bit more about that and or recommendations just in general for timing meals.
So Ms. K asked about timing meals and recommendations for that. Usually, you want to eat a meal about 2 hours before your planned physical activity, and then usually the prime recovery window is about 30 to 60 minutes after activity. Isaac.
What is a fact that you wish you could put in your presentation but didn't have space for?
Isaac asked, what's a fact that your presentation did not have space for? There's a lot. Like I said before, in the beginning, my project was based around ballet dancers. I watched a lot of documentaries about the life of a pro ballerina. And the difference in mindset that they had versus like a normal athlete was really interesting to see. A lot of them believed that like food was gonna hurt their performance, and it was just interesting to see the difference in types of athletes and what they think about that. Milo,
As a ballerina, what do you usually eat on a performance day?
on a performance day?
On a performance
So Milo asked, what do I usually eat on a performance day? So it kind of depends if the show, like what time the show's at. Usually I try to eat a breakfast that is high in protein. I'm gonna be truthfully honest, I'm not the best with nutrition. My family's laughing at me. I get very nervous before shows, so I struggle to eat. So I usually end up eating during the show and after, mostly. But I always make sure to pack a bunch of high protein things with me. I usually have a smoothie or some type of energy drink, and then I will have a very carb-filled meal after the show. Hazel?
You're vegetarian, right?
Yes.
Does that have anything to do with your type of athletics, whatever it's called? Has it affected it in any way? Is it beneficial to be either vegetarian as an athlete? Anything?
Hazel asked, is it beneficial to be either vegetarian or vegan as an athlete? Truthfully, I think that's gonna differ for everyone. I became vegetarian just because I wanted to, not because my athletics were being affected. I didn't do much research into that side of the diet.
What would be like the injury rates between like someone who weightlifts or someone who does like yoga?
I mean, the injury rates would be about the same, the type of injury, and if it's like a small injury or a major injury would be affected. I don't know if there's an exact percentage. Aiden?
Concerning physical therapy, if you could have everybody, or at least every athlete, do like one thing in regards to physical therapy, what would be the one thing you'd want them to start doing?
Warming up properly. Like taking the time to stretch. Isaac?
What was your favorite part of this project?
I really enjoyed meeting with my live sources. They were both athletic trainers that specialized in performing arts, but they both had the same perspective of just because we specialize in performing arts doesn't mean that we couldn't train any athlete. The recovery process is still the same. And then I also enjoyed writing my essays. TJ asked what I'm gonna miss most about VNS. Probably gonna say that bench right there. Jack?
If they made you do this project again, what is one thing you didn't get a research that you want to?
Jack asked, what's one thing if I redid this project I would want to research? I forget who asked, but I would say the hot and cold injuries thing. Yeah, I think that was Isaac. Haven't thought of that.
How important is stretching for like everybody? Like it's important for athletes, but also it's important for like everyday people. Just everyone.
Milo asked, is stretching important for just everyday people? Yes. Yes, it is. Maintaining flexibility is a key way of keeping your strength in your body. Ms. K?
I'm not sure how to phrase it, I guess. We hear, you mentioned a couple times in your presentation about that idea or that mindset that you just push through pain, tough it out, that's what athletes do, or performers. Are there any other myths that you wish you could debunk, things we hear in the media or mindsets in our society that would have an impact on athletes or our health in general?
I am not sure. Yeah, I am not sure. Cameron?
Thoughts on LeBron's longevity?
I actually know nothing about LeBron James, so.
All right, thank you, Eveliina. All right, thank you everyone for being great audience members. Remember to go back to your desk and type up your reflection on what you learned from Eveliina. Take the time now, so don't forget. Wow. And we look forward to more presentations next week.